Good morning and welcome to session 6 on my series on thriving with anxiety. Happy Thursday, lovely day in the Bay today. Today we're going to be chatting a bit about, yesterday we spoke on the different unhelpful thinking styles, and some people would call it negative thinking. There's 10 different thinking styles. And just before that we spoke on the ABCs of thinking. So today's session is a little bit of a carry on from that ABCs of thinking. So remember, A, B and C stood for activating event, the beliefs about the event, and then the consequences. Today we're going to look at the D, the E and the F basically of this ABC model of assisting one with helping yourself with anxiety and our thinking patterns. So today we're going to cover a little bit about detective work and disputation. It's a much shorter session today. It's going to be quite helpful because now what we have to do, just like with anything else, we've got to kind of go a little bit deeper into our thinking and to kind of challenge our thinking and decide how we did it. Alright, so let's just head straight in. Just once more again, if you've got any questions, any comments you'd like to make, please just contact me on this little ticker tape parade that's going across the bottom of our screens. You can get hold of me on my email address or via my website, or you can inbox me or private message me through Facebook. Please make any comments or write any questions down there regarding this, and I can put it together, like I said, in a Q&A. So, and if you do like it, just like the video, and please share it with someone that you feel might be struggling with anxiety or panic. All right. So let's touch on this letter D. So we've got A, B, and C, and then D. And remember also not 2 sessions back, we spoke about the thought diary. So when you're doing A, B, and C, to sort of put it into some sort of a table format in a piece of paper so that you can actually journal it and write it down around what is the activating event, what is the belief about the event, and what is the consequences. And I did share some stuff onto my Facebook page around what a thought diary would look like. And today's session again works through the thought diary, sort of expands on that thought diary that we originally had. All right, so let's have a look at this D that we have called for detective work. And D stands for detective work, or disputing the belief, disputation. So previously we established that it's our thoughts that influence our feelings, emotions and behavior. The thoughts and feelings connection, we called it. And we also discussed and identified some unhelpful thinking patterns and styles that we frequently use. So often a person with panic will think negative thoughts that are characterized by these unhelpful thinking patterns, such as catastrophizing and believing that physical sensations are dangerous. So this leads them to feel even more anxious about possible future panic attacks. And this in turn, of course, maintains and perpetuates that anxiety. It becomes like a self-perpetuating system, basically. So the key to changing this way is found in challenging and changing our unhelpful thoughts and beliefs. And this begins when you take a good hard look at them. Imagine that you're a detective and a lawyer, and your unhelpful thoughts and beliefs are to be investigated or they're on trial. So to assess whether or not your thoughts and beliefs are valid, you need to gather and examine evidence. As such, we liken this process to that of being a detective. So therefore D stands for detective work, or as we say, like disputing the beliefs. And where you look for this evidence that does or doesn't support your thoughts and beliefs. So like all good detectives, we need to find out the facts and gather the evidence. So here are some helpful questions that you can think about. Once you have a thought, for example, the snake will bite me and it's going to kill me. What is the evidence or proof that my thoughts and beliefs are true? Is there any evidence that disproves my thoughts or beliefs? How do I know that my thoughts and beliefs are true? Are there facts that I'm ignoring or that I'm overlooking? What other explanations could there possibly be? And how realistic are my thoughts, beliefs, and expectations? So as I mentioned, D could also stand for disputation. Excuse me. And remember, you're also like a lawyer, asking questions that challenge your thoughts, beliefs, and expectations, and ultimately testing and challenging whether or not they stand true, and whether they help or hinder you. So here are some more helpful questions that you could ask yourself. What other ways are there of viewing the situation? How might someone else view the situation? If I were not anxious, how would I view the situation differently? And realistically, what is the likelihood of that happening, this thought that I think is going to happen? And is it helpful for me to think this way? So detective work and disputation is about trying to be objective about our thoughts. It's about analyzing them, assessing and evaluating them to see if they are indeed valid and true, as opposed to accepting these thoughts and believing them without question. So in session 4, we've an example of the thought diary. We spoke about this example of the thought diary, and we're going to continue with that example in today's session. And like I said, we're just going to extend it a bit to include the D, the disputing the event, because when we can dispute the event, we can end up with a new event or a new consequence. So it's basically the E. So let's have a look at this this thought diary that we spoke about. So we used an example of having a panic attack or an anxiety attack if we walked into a meeting room at work. So the activating event was walking into a meeting room at work. And you can write down whatever you want under that section. So if you just split your page into 4, activating event, beliefs about that event, C, the consequences underneath A, and then we're going to have this new little section at the bottom right, which is all the unhelpful thinking patterns that we have here. But let's just run through this example of walking into a meeting room and just suddenly finding yourself getting a panic attack. So under the activating event, it can be actually an actual event, it can be a situation, a thought about the event, a mental picture, or even a recollection. That's your activating event, and you need to write that down into your thought diary. Then we have these different beliefs. So under the B section of this 4-page split, you're going to have list any statements that link A to C. Okay? So ask yourself, what was I thinking? What was I saying to myself? What's going through my head at the time? And find the most distressing or hot thought. If you remember, we spoke about these hot thoughts. Out of all those thoughts, which was the hot one? And then rate how much you believe that thought to be between a 0 and 100. So things like I can't breathe, I'm going to suffocate, I'm going to have a panic attack in front of everyone that's looking at me, I've got to run out from the room, or they're going to think I'm crazy. So people will often then respond to that and go put water on their faces or whatever. And then the hot thought or the thought discovery question, what does this mean? One thinks that they're going crazy. So your hot thought might be, I'm going crazy, I'm losing my head. And the consequences, of course, underneath the bottom left-hand side of the schedule is all the words that describe how you feel, the consequences, and underline the one that's most associated with that activating event, and the intensity then of that particular feeling. So based on this fear and the thought patterns of what's going to happen if you go into this meeting, panic would be one of them, which is 90, and feeling very stressed or anxious would be about 60 out of 100. Then in the bottom right, and of course heart pounding, lightheadedness, dry mouth, fast breathing, all of these kind of things you can jot down so that you can start getting an understanding of the pattern of your panic attacks or the pattern of your anxiety as you go through it. And then in the bottom right, like I mentioned again, all your unhelpful thinking styles. So on the top right, where you've written down what your belief systems are, the bottom right, just write down there if you recognize any unhelpful thinking styles that we've already covered, like mental filter, jumping to conclusions, personalization, catastrophizing, black and white thinking, shoulds and musts, overgeneralizing, labeling, emotional reasoning, and then discounting or disqualifying or ignoring positives. So in this case, and then you can draw little links, arrows up to these thoughts, we are encountering catastrophizing, jumping to conclusions, mind reading, and predictive thinking. Okay. Now the little new part, so that was the thought diary kind of that we covered, just adding in the unhelpful thinking styles. Then on the next page, you would just split your page into the D, which is the detective work and the disputation. And you can now work on your hot thought, which was I'm going crazy. Okay, remember that out of all the thoughts, that was the one that was creating the most panic and anxiety for you. So on this page, you just separate your page into 2 sides, factual evidence for my hot thought and factual evidence against my hot thought. So if we use this example of I'm going crazy, you could write something like, under the factual evidence for my hot thought, I feel strange, like I'm not connected to my body, I'm having this out-of-body experience. We call it depersonalization. I can't think clearly, my thoughts keep racing. So these are the factual evidences. On the other side of the page, for the evidence against your hot thought is, the symptoms I have are due to a fight or flight response, okay, which is the reality testing. I'm still able to recognize how I'm thinking. I've had these sensations before, and it only takes a little while before they go down. All right. So this already starts getting you thinking a little bit more rationally, that you can take control of the situation. So some other disputation questions that could arise are, how realistic are my thoughts, beliefs, and expectations? And underneath that, you can write, the symptoms I have are part of a normal fear response. Everyone has similar sensations when they're in fight or flight, so it's unlikely that I'm going crazy. And then the next question, what other ways are there of viewing the situation? I'm stressed about the meeting because there's so much I've got to do before the end of the month. And then, is it helpful for me to think this way? And then thinking this way adds to my anxiety, and then I end up not concentrating on what people are saying. And it pretty much narrows your thinking right down. So this is the kind of exercise that one can do if you're trying to break it down. Remember, A, activating event, beliefs, consequences, look at your unhelpful thinking styles, write down your hot thought, evidence for your hot thought, evidence against it, and then just how do I dispute these questions, these thoughts, just by writing down how realistic are these thoughts, what other ways are there of viewing this question, this situation, and is it helpful for me to think this way? So now, as I said, today is a very short session, so we're just going to go straight through into the summary of today, and it's just important that you understand the A, B, C, D aspect. So today we understood that detective work is about trying to be objective about our thoughts. It's evaluating if we are tuning out valuable information which in fact might help us to feel better. Detective work requires you to gather evidence for and against your unhelpful thoughts and beliefs, particularly your hot thought for every activating event. And disputation is about asking yourself questions that's going to help you look for other information around you so that you can make an informed decision about your thoughts instead of just accepting them. So it's, in psychology we'd say you're challenging your thinking. So here are some typical detective work and disputation questions. What experience do I have that shows that this thought belief is not completely true all of the time? What is the evidence for or against my automatic thoughts? Are there any other ways of viewing the situation? How might someone else view the situation? And if I were given advice to a friend, what would I say to that friend? And are there any strengths or positives in me or in the situation that I'm perhaps overlooking? Alright, so thank you for listening today. Like I said, a short and sweet session on disputation and detective work. In the next session, we're going to concentrate or have a look at how we create these balanced thoughts, or to create better, more balanced thoughts based on this detective work and disputation. So thanks for listening. I really appreciate it. Like I said, if you like the session, just like it, and please share it amongst your friends. It'll be much appreciated. Have a lovely day further. Take care.